Houston, a thriving metropolis located in South Texas, home to massive amounts of trade and commerce and 7% of the Texas population, also home to some of the fastest growing neighborhoods in the country. The thing is, Houston's not alone in this. Some of the biggest cities in Texas have been experiencing huge amounts of growth in recent decades, including cities like Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, and Austin. But where are all these people coming from and why? The answer? California. In the past few years, there has been migration of historic proportions, specifically from California to Texas, and most notably in the urban areas. This has had huge impacts on the demographics, culture, and infrastructure of these areas, and can even be somewhat upsetting to Texas citizens. But first, let's talk about what is even causing this huge migration. Why are people moving away from the Golden State, known for its California dream and its breathtaking countryside and beautiful cities? While there are quite a few reasons for this, some of these cities might not be as beautiful as they seem when you look deeper at what's actually going on, especially at the political and economic levels. Let's say you're looking for a small 900-foot condo or apartment in the city, not too far away from where you work. It should be pretty cheap, right? The reality is, in California, you could be potentially looking at upwards of $500,000 for just that. For comparison, in Texas, this same amount of money can get you a 5,000 square foot house in a gated neighborhood or perhaps even a suburban division. California is in a housing crisis. This has been going on since 1970 and shows no signs of slowing down anytime soon. According to data from the U.S. Census Bureau, housing costs in California are a little over twice as high as the national average, and also twice as high as home prices in Texas. Amanda Carter, who moved to Texas from California with her husband in 2008, sold her 950 square foot condo in California for the same price she brought her 5,000 square foot home in Texas. Her condo was $600,000. So what's causing all this? The answer is California's political policies and the failure of its legislative bodies to bring this crisis under control. Golden State has been largely the source of its own demise. While several factors contribute to the economic downfall, such as geography in the way that development is often blocked by the Rocky Mountains and seismic activity along the San Andreas Fault, for the most part, it's the fault of local municipalities and the state government. First, there's rent control, which are regulations on how much landlords can charge rent. The law on rent control in California is that landlords cannot increase the rent by more than 10% per 12-month period. And then on top of that, each city's municipality usually has its own even stricter laws on rent increase. For example, Beverly Hills and Los Angeles both have an 8% cap on rent increase, and Hayward and San Jose both have their rent increase capped at 5%. While it may sound counterintuitive, rent control is one of the worst things you can do for renters. Rent control decreases the amount of money a landlord can charge for rent, which de-incentivizes investment in the industry and drives up prices. More specifically, in California, when landlords can't increase the amount of rent that they charge, this can make them vulnerable to unexpected changes. Some of these changes might include damages from things like natural disasters or improvements to things in the home. And when you limit a landlord's ability to mitigate for these changes, landlords set their initial price high. This increases the market rate for housing. Then there's zoning. Zoning laws made by municipalities can make it incredibly difficult to build affordable housing in areas that have high demand for such housing. People tend to like affordable housing in close proximity to the cities that they work, but these areas of land are usually zoned for single-family housing in large lots, and the spaces that are zoned for multi-family housing usually have a height limit that limits the capacity of these complexes. This makes it almost impossible to build affordable housing, and when anybody tries to change these zoning restrictions, the middle and upper class people who live there protest because they don't want the property values to decrease, and they want to preserve the quote-unquote neighborhood character, which in some cases just means to keep the minorities out. Either way, it's extremely difficult to build affordable housing around high-demand cities and metro areas. As a result of this, construction companies find that it's easier and more profitable to build large, single-family luxury homes, which does not help the housing crisis at all. So why Texas? Texas, unlike California, has attractively low costs of living and housing. For starters, Texas does not have the geographical barriers that California does. Texas is relatively flat, which makes it incredibly easy for huge metropolises such as Houston, DFW, San Antonio, and Austin to expand in almost every direction. Economically, however, Texas is loads better than California. Texas has cheaper labor due largely to immigration from the South and has very loose building regulations, making it easier to build homes. All of these factors drive house prices down and keep a friendly real estate market. But just in general, Texas has a low cost of living and a more efficient tax structure. For example, California has income tax rates ranging from 1% to 12% depending on income, while Texas has no income tax at all. Amanda Carter, who moved in 2008, states that her family's cost of living has decreased since moving there. Their money goes further for things like vacations, visiting family, and money causes less stress. Many Californians agree that Texas is the place to live. In fact, out of every 3 residents in California, 1 of them is considering leaving the state, according to a study. And out of 300,000 people that left the state in 2022, 100,000 went to Texas, which takes the lead for the most California immigrants out of all the states. Major metropolises in Texas have experienced massive growth, and while this may be for the better or for the worse, one thing's for sure: California has a lot to figure out in terms of its housing market and its economy. And while the government and legislative bodies have been making major strides towards that direction, we'll see how much this really helps slow down the great California exodus.